Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is the podcast where we watch a movie and talk about our thoughts after we watched it. With me, we have the general crew and a special guest tonight. John Garcia, how's it going?
It's going well, Dixon. I pulled out an insurance policy on you, my friend. Oh, shit, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Fuck.
Oh, I don't think I signed off on that. I need to look into this. We'll table this until after the recording. Okay. Also with me, Ryan King. How's it going, Ryan?
It's going well. I'm looking forward to talking about actually decent Yellowstone.
That was gonna be my letterbox review, but I didn't know if it was disrespectful.
Cool. And we have a special guest tonight, my good friend Eric Reynolds. How's it going, Eric?
Hey, Dixon. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here. Didn't know I was expected to prepare a joke, but...
No, it's fine. You don't have to.
So someone edited something better than what I said in post, if you don't mind.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
Thanks.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll just do it in my voice and just like turn it up an octave or two.
Wow, is that how we're going to play this?
Cool. So this week, if you caught on to some of those jokes there, we are talking about the new Martin Scorsese epic, Killers of the Flower Moon.
You know, you got nice color skin. What color would you say that is?
My color.
The Osage. They have the worst land possible. But they outsmarted everybody. The land had oil on it. Black gold. Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
This wealth should come to us. Their time is over. It's going to be another tragedy.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else. They're like buzzards circling our people. We're still warriors.
I ought to kill these white men who killed my family. I need you here.
I am right here.
You've got to take back control of your home.
I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
See, what about him?
See who's doing it.
Based on the David Gran novel, nonfiction book from 2017 about the Osage murders of the 1920s and the FBI investigation into those. I've been looking forward to this movie for a long time. If you were a frequent listener of the podcast, you know that I love Martin Scorsese and was very interested to see him tackle this subject matter. It's very different than, as far as setting goes than what he usually does. It's kind of a Western. It's a period piece. It's a little bit different than, what he's normally works on. And I think some of the kind of themes of the film are similar to things that he's done in the past, but the setting is very different. I was interested to see him kind of do his Scorsese thing in a different type of setting. Leonardo DiCaprio stars as Ernest Burkhart. Robert De Niro also stars as William Hale. And Lily Gladstone really steals the film as Molly Burkhart. The story here is around the Osage Indian tribe in northeastern Oklahoma. This was once a vaunted, powerful tribe that took over the space from like Missouri to Colorado and had lots of space. And as the American government was wont to do at the time, would continue to negotiate peace treaties with them and fuck them over and move them into smaller portions of land over and over until finally they pushed them into this barren patch of land in northeastern Oklahoma that no one wanted. And the tribe actually felt a lot of relief when that happened, because they're like, at least no one will take this land from us now because no one wants it. We can just live in peace. It turns out the land is overflowing with oil and everyone wants to steal their land. The story kind of follows the the Osage tribe and members of that tribe as they are dealing with some of the local white citizens who are marrying into the tribe and killing off the members of the tribe to steal their oil rights and to kind of steal the wealth away from the tribe. So Leonardo DiCaprio's Ernest Burkhart marries an Osage Indian, Molly Burkhart, and William Hale, played by De Niro, is his uncle, and he is kind of orchestrating some, this massive murder plot behind the scenes to steal these oil rights. It's a pretty fascinating film from that standpoint. I actually read the book this weekend after I had seen the movie, and went on a trip to see some family, saw the book at the airport. I was like, fuck it, why not? I'll buy the book and give it a read. It was interesting to read it and kind of understand some of his historical context in a little bit more depth. That kind of helped to give the movie a little bit more weight in some of the things that I was seeing. The book is very kind of historical and cold in how it recounts these events. And it's a good book, but the script really brings in a lot of characterization and depth to these characters that is just not really there on the pages of this book. The point of the book is David Grant is looking back through these historical records and documenting here's what actually happened when these murders occurred. And Scorsese and Eric Roth are taking this and putting in a lot of life into this screenplay and making it more of a narrative story that works really well. The book is more told from the standpoint of the FBI agents, Tom White, played by Jesse Plemons, and kind of the investigation into the murders. I think it's interesting that originally the screenplay was written from that standpoint. DiCaprio was cast to play Tom White. They were all ready to shoot, and then COVID hit and they couldn't shoot. And while they were kind of ruminating on this, Scorsese and DiCaprio decided, I don't know if we like this story. It's kind of this white savior thing, and it's kind of pulling away from the narrative of the Osage tribe and what they were actually going through. What if we kind of recast the story around the tribe and the people around them that are committing these terrible acts? And obviously Scorsese has a history of making great movies about anti-heroes. You have Travis Bickle, Jordan Belfort, Jesus Christ, a lot of anti-heroes in Scorsese's filmography. And he does that really well here, and kind of telling the story of the evil that is happening from the perspective of the people that are doing it and the people that are experiencing it. I've seen some criticism of the film saying that, hey, this movie is not really about the Osage tribe. It's really a movie for white people to kind of understand the terrible things that happened, and it's from the perspective of the white characters for the most part. I think there's some truth to that, but also Scorsese's making a big studio film, and he knows that he can't get this made if it is he can't make Kundun right again with $200 million. He can't do it from the perspective of the Indians solely. So he has to have movie stars come in and kind of play these roles, but tell the story more from the Osage perspective than he would have, kind of under the way the book was written in the normal script. But I think the story is pretty fascinating. I'm excited to get into it and break it down. It's a 3.5-hour epic. There's a lot of stuff here. I've only seen it once, and I'm really excited to go see it again and kind of pick up more things. A Scorsese movie, there's so much editing, there's so much stuff going on. It's kind of hard to pick it apart entirely on a first watch. But I really enjoyed it on the first viewing. John and I saw it at the Bob Bullock IMAX here in town, and that was a pretty cool experience, except for the douchebag next to me that kept talking. But
and the people that were like, "That's Martin Scorsese." At one point in time.
So half the theater started talking when Scorsese came on screen. But yeah, I'm really interested to get into this. John, what were your thoughts on the film?
Well, I can't get the score out of my head. Robbie Robertson's
R.I.P.
fucking score. Yeah, rest in peace. I've been trying to get Sasha ready to go see it because she knows she's going to have to. She saw Oppenheimer. She can do this too. And the entire time I was I've just been thinking about that score and hearing it in my head every so often. And the way that film built, I know going into it too, Dixon, I told you that Scorsese kind of said he was really influenced by Ari Aster and Ari Aster's pacing in his films. Mm-hmm. And that's what he wanted to kind of do in Killers of the Flower Moon. And I was that's a really interesting thing to just say, throw it out there.
Yeah.
So I was all right, I'm ready to sink into whatever this is.
It's also really cool that Scorsese is willing to be influenced by filmmakers like 45 years younger than him. Like,
yeah, he's always like looking for something that will just make his films feel better for him. Like it helps his creative process. And I noticed I also noticed there were like a lot of drone shots in this one too, and like things that I don't recall seeing in other Scorsese films. They're usually like crane shots and that kind of more traditional. But yeah, like I really enjoyed it. I have not read the book. From the perspective of the movie, doesn't really feel like it's trying to obscure too much from you. I heard from somebody else that the book feels a little more like a whodunit to some extent because of being told from that FBI perspective. And here it was kind of like laid out immediately. You can kind of understand that there's double talk happening on screen. You feel
you
like,
know what the evil that's going on from minute one. Like, you're in on the crime.
But there's still like some part of, I think that it's interesting to start with characters that you already have like heavy suspicions, if not like just a sinking feeling about what they're doing. And then try to work backwards and make them really become fully humanized in these weird ways where it's like, Leo's character conflicted me at several times because I was like, I can't tell if he's sincere. And like the same thing with King Hale is just like, I can't tell at parts he's like patting some of the Osage tribe on the back and comforting them. And at other times he's slipping them booze to like get them addicted to alcohol, pulling out like insurance policies on them and just doing all this really sneaky, dirty shit. But like, and at times it makes it funny. Like I found it really interesting that this movie did not just have the most bleak and oppressive feeling to its story as it went through. There were moments of genuine like, that's fucking ridiculous and like laughing at it. And then it would immediately snap back into this is all fucked up. Like everything that's happening is fucked up. And watching those, it's
like classic Scorsese to be able to do that whiplash, but not like it,
not go
it
against,
feels genuine.
Not go against it. So yeah, I really enjoyed it on the first watch. I have this, I have this kind of ability when I see a movie and I find it really striking and I really liked it. When we were walking out, I kept talking about how I really enjoyed it. And after that, like I've been tempted to just write out everything that I remember from it to see how much it could be. Cause, Eric, I don't think that you know this, but when we went and saw Pig with Nicolas Cage, I wrote that entire movie, like the entire plot beats of that movie. The moment that I got home, I just scripted it all out because I knew I loved it. And so I have that same kind of feeling for this movie. And when I go see it again, I'm like really excited to bring more people in and like watch it and talk with more friends about it and everything. So definitely leaves me with those feelings. But yeah, Lily Gladstone, that's the only other thing I wanted to just mention is Lily Gladstone fucking just crushes it. And I am so happy to see her in something beyond like Reservation Dogs, which she's also great in. But yeah, like when I got out, all I could think about was I wonder what the people who watched Yellowstone and enjoyed it thought of this movie. Like that's one thing that I was thinking was like, did they go in and come out and they were just like, well, that's not as good as Yellowstone? Because I feel like that's what they would say. They'd be like very upset about it.
Where's Kevin Costner? God damn it!
But yeah, those are my first initial takes on this. But yeah, kick it over to Eric.
Thanks. Yeah, I would probably start by echoing a lot of what I've heard and kind of what we've been talking about. My first reaction to the movie is I feel like it's something I have to see a second time.
Yeah, agreed.
It's so, as Scorsese has kind of gotten older and started making these more epic films, it becomes, but combining that with his style, with the fast cuts and just so much happening all the time, I find it just so difficult to digest everything on a first watch. And so I'm incredibly excited to go back and watch this movie again. I also did something with this kind of in preparation for this conversation that I don't usually do, which is usually I will go back as soon as I watch a movie, especially if I like it, and read every single thing I can find out about this movie. In fact, Dixon, I think I mentioned earlier, I tried to find the book at the airport the other day in preparation for this conversation, but I did not this time because I feel like there was so much happening with this movie and so many things that, so many ways in which the movie worked so well and so many ways in which I actually did really struggle with it. And one of the ways in which I struggled with it, you mentioned earlier, Dixon, where, this isn't a white savior story. Right. And it's interesting. I did not know that they recut and rethought this movie to particularly explicitly avoid that. But the Osage tribe did not feel like an active character in this film in many ways. So much of the way they interacted with the world felt mediated through white people. And on the one hand, there's some real historical accuracy to that, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
But in another way, it seems to rob the tribe of some autonomy or some not individuality, but some agency in this. And I'm still digesting whether that is a reaction I have, a reaction other people have, a thing that kind of Scorsese unintentionally put into the movie or maybe intentionally put in. These are the things that I feel like I'm excited to talk about here. And also, again, when I kind of go back and rewatch it again, try and understand this. And I totally agree with the Leonardo DiCaprio character being this really an enigma for me, where I found his love of Molly credible in a lot of ways, and in other ways, like completely incredible.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not just simply like you can't do, like, how can you do bad things to someone you love? That's far too trite. Right. Mm-hmm. But something about that relationship and her kind of unbelievable amount of trust in him, despite a movie that never really felt like it earned that trust for him. These are things that kind of, are sitting with me right now, and I'm wrestling with in the aftermath of the movie. And so I really enjoyed it. And also, I feel like almost have more questions about the movie now that I've seen it than I did going into it, And so, normally I would react to that by just reading every single thing I possibly can about it. But this time I'm trying to sit with it and digest it, talk about it as a group, and then go back and watch it again and see how I feel about it. So, I don't know that there's a through line in all that, except to say, like, I found it a more difficult film than I expected, and maybe a more difficult film than I often expect from Scorsese. And I don't mean that as an insult to him, but I don't think of him as I think of him as a great director and someone who can evoke many, can evoke deep emotions, but maybe not evoke emotional complexity to the degree I kind of feel it right now. And I'm curious how that resonates for the rest of you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm interested to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Before we dive into that, Ryan, what were your thoughts on the film?
Yep. I will jump out and put that I do have a bias. So I'm going to list that out because I think news should do that. I know they do that in the United Kingdom, where they initially start with their bias before they talk about something. I am Cherokee through my mom's side of the family. Not I claim Cherokee. Like, I actually have a card. I actually can tell you that they pay faster for COVID payments than the federal government, which is not surprising to a Cherokee person. It is interesting having learned about my heritage, trying to get closer, learning Cherokee language, still being a mixed person and having the complications with that. And so I came in the movie wanting to see representation, just representation. I've talked about Reservation Dogs so much because it's a fully native production and cast, and they're front and center, and it gives a good view into the difficulties of native population on a reservation today. But I will say that I feel like I hope this really opens the dialogue more in the way that, somewhat disappointingly, but still something Dances with Wolves and Last of the Mohicans did do. And I'm like, and that's it. There kind of has been, there was a Geronimo movie, and then it's like this. Like, this is the biggest thing in a long time. Lily Gladstone, fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. It was so awesome. Such a, at sometimes subtle performance. But just to feel the pain, to feel her pain through this, that was the through line of just how much more can she endure? How much more can be put on her, put on the tribe? She's absolutely going to get nominated. There's no way
I would hope
that she
so.
isn't.
Yeah.
And I really would hope that she would win, but even just a nomination would make her the first Native person for an acting role, a Native American. Not, there have been Native Canadians and Mexicans and Taika Waititi picks up stuff every now and again, nominations. But like that would be a big stepping point as well, that this long to not have that representation and to finally start to see it here in television and movies. And this is something that's going to go in front of anybody. So Scorsese's on it, and it's in your face. So many people are going to see this and talk about it. So from that standpoint, it's important and a step. I will say again, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked about how many women needed to be on the Supreme Court for it to be like her to be done talking about it, and she said all of them. If every single person was a woman, then we could be done talking about it, because she's like, it never was a concern when it was all men. Nobody talked about it then, right? And in that same way, I'm like, if we could get something that was on Reservation Dog level, where it's produced, directed, written, starring, front and center, all of it, and it was viewed by a large audience, that would be amazing. But the next best thing is something like this. Like, it has to take these steps and continue to get there. And the further we can get from the fucking Disney Pocahontas to something like this is a big step. It's a big step. So then, yeah, with all of that, I absolutely fucking loved it. It is a movie that did feel like 3.5 hours, but I will say, and Darla went with me as well, you feel that it's a long movie, but at the end you are just so locked in, especially like that last hour, that you're like, I can't look away, step away, like anything. Every moment is important and well acted, and everything at the end, that you're just gripped to your seat the way that this was done. I do think it's interesting because when I first heard this announced, I really kind of was like, I guess it's just going to be the detective story, right? Which is what they first started working towards. And, punched up, I guess, to make it better. But seeing what they ended up switching to, I think, is good in that it gives that, like, inside the tribe start and the visibility to all the things that were going on at the time. It spends a lot at the beginning of the movie, I feel like, just setting up, like, the people, the interactions between the different races here, like, how the town operates, who our key people are, just like the feeling of all these mixed things, like what's it like in the church, what's it like for a wedding, like these complicated intermixed things that they have now. And then I would say Eric Roth as an adapting a screenplay. I've talked before about how much I liked Munich, and I felt the sense here of the same thing he did with the Munich script, of taking some real events and being able to create something you can follow as a through line, but is still a movie, but it's still really true to all the events. Obviously, there's flourishes added here that I don't think anybody can know, exactly some of the things. And even with like what came out in the trial, there's still questions of like what exactly the extent was. Honestly, this movie kind of downplays how horrible it really, really was to get to like what they could, it's like you could have kept going with this even after we see like the end of the court. I'm like, there's more stuff where like DAs were attempted murders on DAs and witness tampering, jury tampering. Like it just goes on and on and on. And then
a lot
even
of
getting
murders
to like
committed by other people that aren't Bill Hale, right? That are like out. Like he wasn't the only one doing this, right? Like,
right. We saw murders at the beginning that it's unclear, and there were other murders discussed. It's unclear if he was a part of it or not. And there were definitely ones they were not. They didn't talk a lot about the guardianship. It was mentioned in the background. That was one thing where I don't know if they could have found a way to explain that, because that was a big deal, especially for the Osage, to have this guardianship. They mentioned the like civilized tribes, and the way that was handled, different from other tribes, led to these weird situations where like everyone in the Osage had to have a guardian to actually like make sure they knew how to use money well, and those guardians fucking abused the hell out of them, to the point of like 2010s, there was a settlement from the U.S. government of like, hey, we really fucked this up. And it's like the largest payout to any tribe at that time.
Yeah, it was like $380 million or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one thing in the reading the book I really appreciated. Like that helped add a lot of context to the film, was the way that the level that they get into the guardianship situation. Like basically the government viewed full-blood Osages as like incompetent people who can't be trusted with their own money, and they have to have a white person do all that stuff for them and control how they get to spend their money and only give them a certain allowance from it. And it's like it's really fucking fucked up. And that's
really
something that's
fucked up,
like
yeah.
you see some of those scenes in the movie, but it's not necessarily clear what that exact dynamic is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never
could
quite
only-
contextualized.
I could only assume it was fucked up because I was just like, guardianship to pull your own money out? Like, that was my
Yeah.
initial reaction.
Like Molly having to beg that white guy for
Yeah.
passage to DC and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, ugh.
Yeah. So yeah, all of that, like, it's one of those that I hope brings the attention that people will read up on it. People will hear these things, see these things. But then, yeah, just as like acting, seeing Scorsese cover a Western is a new take as well. And I do feel like he got, there's a lot slower pace here, a lot more methodical, slower pace, which Westerns have. There are a lot of those larger shots that we get, the larger, slower shots, especially like scale of the scenery, you know, outdoors, whatever, like going through the town, all these kind of things that slow it all down and give you that I kind of expect from a Western. So I feel like he nailed that as well, the Western feel. So that was a good change for him. There's definitely things to talk about. So I kind of want to get in because I think we can just start try to pick things. And I don't, this conversation could go on forever and ever. So I do want to start, like, let's start hitting points and go from there.
I feel like maybe we should go for what Eric brought up, which was kind of that feeling that the Osage people did not have a full agency in this film, and whether or not how like conflicted that sort of feels to the telling of the story. Because I think that's like a theme with a lot of other entities in this. There's things that like we don't have time to get into. We just talked about like guardianship. We just, you know, the Osage tribe, we see moments where we get to see them kind of blending into being assimilated into like white society, being forced to assimilate anyway. And like rituals and things like going to church and that. But we also see other societies, other less favorable societies that are represented in passing, like, I don't know, the Ku Klux Klan for like 5 seconds in the middle of a parade. And like other seedy, unsavory characters who just kind of come and go. And of course, Scorsese's like history as representing like, I think Dixon, you were saying that, you know, this is something different that Scorsese's done, but he's kind of applying his eye to it in a way that's very familiar. And I think it is like, it's a mobster movie. Like there's a mafia at the heart of this. There is a crime syndicate that is perpetrating it. And I'm very interested to hear y'all's thoughts on like the Osage tribe being represented in the way that they are, the sort of moments that show, I think there's a reverence. There is a reverence definitely for what they are doing and how they do it in any of the scenes, that is like maintained purely. But then outside of that, anytime they interact with the other like people in this Oklahoma town, it's always through that white lens that you can see those characters interact with the Osage. And I think I also kind of noted when we got out, Dixon, that you could just see white people seething like through their teeth in like any one scene, whether they were the chauffeur for the Osage or just somebody who was in town that was saying something friendly to them. There was just something that you could feel that was off, like when they say good morning to them, any of that. It's just an energy. But yeah, like I've kind of talked enough about what my observations on it were. I'm curious, Dixon, Ryan, how y'all felt about it, given what Eric kind of said.
Yeah, I think like one thing that Scorsese does really well, right, is craft anti-heroes that if you're not careful, you end up rooting for, right? And like that's why, you know, John, you talk a lot about the dorm room poster problem, like people who misinterpret Scorsese movies, like stockbrokers that love Wolf of Wall Street, and like just dudes that think like mafia life is cool and like, oh, that yeah, Henry Hill's really awesome, right? Or like, you know, Travis Bickle seems really cool. And it's like you start, he makes you identify with villains and then shows you their true colors and how evil they are. And I think, you know, like Taxi Driver, the first half of the movie is just like he's a lonely Vietnam War veteran who doesn't know how to assimilate into society, and it's got this jazzy score, and like, oh man, like I feel for that guy and understand what he's going through, and then he starts fucking murdering politicians and pimps and stuff, and like going on a Batman rampage, and like it changes very quickly. And I think with Killers of the Flower Moon, maybe why it feels more complex is the closeness of the perpetrators of the crime to the victims of the crime, right? And it's like you have these just unthinkable acts of violence where husbands are killing their wives or killing their wives' friends or sisters or mothers. And, it's this evil plot to consolidate oil rights into as few people as possible and to marry them and to kill them off so you get the rights inherited down to you. And it's like, it's just so fucked up. And like, I think that's why, like Molly doesn't see it coming for so long, because it's just so evil and it's so unthinkable that someone would actually do that, right? And I think I agree with you, Eric, that like I wish, and it's like it's hard to say this about a 3.5 hour movie, like I do wish there was a little bit more time invested in Ernest and Molly's relationship so you understand why she feels that trust to the degree that she does. But again, it's hard to do everything in this massive epic film. But I think that's maybe why it feels ickier and more complex than maybe some of his other films that are also following terrible people that kind of trick you into rooting for them, and then you feel bad about yourself at the end of the movie, because like this is relatives committing crimes against each other, and this is like like Bill Hale says, like, it's like, I'm a true friend to the Osage, and he's going out of his way to make it seem like he is a benefactor, and he's like building roads and schools for these people and doing everything he can to appear to be on their side, and then just cutting them off at the knees when they're looking the other way. And I think that's just, it's almost like the most extreme version of the thing that Scorsese has been trying to talk about for the majority of his career. And it's done in a way that it's just so upsetting to think about these types of crimes actually happening. And, it's an anti-hero story, but it's also, I think you do get a closer view from the victims than you normally do in a Scorsese movie. And he's trying to do that as much as he can while like satisfying the Apple executives that Leo is getting enough screen time,
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point though. Yeah.
I will say, I want to just plus one onto that, like the romance. That's the only part of the movie that doesn't feel quite perfected to me. And I know that there was a lot of talk before the movie came out about how they were cutting down runtime and like all this other stuff. And I wonder if that's kind of what got cut. Is it has kind of the I don't want to drag this movie into it, but I have to. It has the Notebook problem where it's just like there's an instant romance that sort of happens that you just don't parse, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense after, like why, but you have to just go with it. Like the movie just says you have to go with it. We get like one sequence between Ernest and Molly where they like sit in a house together in a rainstorm, and that's like the closest we can get to the quiet intimacy that we need to be like, okay, I can see why they're together now. Because after that, it kind of is like, nope, he's just her chauffeur, and they're, bantering back and forth, and past a certain point, they're both cute enough. They both get married. Like that's a thing that kind of happened, but it also is like in the 1920s and like earlier times before we have like all these dating apps and shit. People literally were just like, yeah, you'll do. Like, yeah, fuck it. Sure. I'll go with that. Like whatever. And so
You're
of it
of
is
childbearing age and not deathly ill.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
Yes. Romance in the old times. But yeah, Ryan, I'm curious. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's so much in the movie that's there that there's just has to be some things that drop. Mm-hmm. And then I would say we do get sort of check-ins with Molly and Ernest along the way. I think the normal spark maybe that you would expect, the chemistry is not quite there between our actors. I would say the one scene where they're in the taxi together and she says something and he's like, I'm sure you're saying handsome devil or whatever. Mm-hmm. That was a moment, and she laughs about it, where there kind of was like a legitimate chemistry there. but we kind of didn't really see it in other parts. I think because we also had to show this natural distance of like not understanding each other either, like that she's kind of keeping her own things. And then it did do sort of set up the like at the beginning of the like, they're quiet and they listen versus us white people that come in and just talk a bunch to fill the space. And you feel that a lot of times too with Ernest just trying to fill up the space with her, not really knowing exactly, where he stands or what's going on. So yeah, I do feel like that could have been a little bit better, mainly because really, I think in another story, it'd probably be fine, but here that real tough dynamic of him honestly having to know that he's poisoning her, but lying to himself in a way, and in the courtroom kind of being like, no, I really did love her. I really did fall in love with her. I didn't go into this thinking that I was going to do all these things, and not having something to kind of look at and be like, yeah, that is true. It is complicated. It's like, you don't necessarily feel it's that complicated. That was really one of Darla's major hangups. Like, she really enjoyed it and was like, that was a great movie. Like, when we walked away, and we've been talking about it since, but she's really kind of keeps going in about like, that's bullshit. He can't have loved her. It can't possibly have been like that. He had to know what he was doing all the time. Like he that's not true. And I like, he says it in court, so maybe it's just, it isn't true, but I do feel like the movie's trying to make you feel like he does believe that. But it isn't quite sold fully.
I also don't think it can be overstated how stupid he is, right? Like,
Yes,
we did talk about that. He is, he is
and-
unbelievably stupid.
DiCaprio does a great job playing stupid. Like, I thought he was great as Ernest, and just like this guy who just does whatever the last person he talked to told him to do. He has no strong opinions on anything. He doesn't even seem to be greedy. He doesn't even seem to necessarily want to steal all of Molly's family's head rights. He just does what King Bill tells him to do, and just doesn't really think about it. And then when he's with Molly, he's just living in that space and comforting her and doing what she wants him to do. And he's just like an absolute grotesque piece of shit who has no backbone whatsoever. And I think it's funny, like that leading into kind of talking about this as a gangster movie in Scorsese's filmography, like. Most of Scorsese's gangster movies, there's like a certain level of competence in the organized crime that's going on. Maybe not Wolf of Wall Street, but like you don't necessarily see how kind of blatantly they're breaking the law in that movie. But like most of the movies, like, Goodfellas or Casino, like they're committing crimes, but they're like burying people out in the desert. And so like you're not seeing the murders that happen. Here it's just like, we're just killing people and leaving them to rot in a ditch and just waiting for somebody to find them. Like there's no effort to actually cover up the crime. And there's like, there's a level of stupidity and hubris in that, right? Where like all of the white members of society that are involved in this plot don't believe that they can actually face any consequences for killing Osage Indians because of the society in which they exist. And like, they'll just pay off a judge or a prosecutor or a cop if they need to. But at the end of the day, they're going to be fine, to where like they don't even bother burying the bodies. Right. And like, there's that funny scene where like after, Henry Roan is killed, and De Niro's talking to DiCaprio, and he's like, I told him to shoot him between the eyes, make it look like a suicide. Why'd he take the gun and shoot him in the back of the head? It's like this funny back and forth where they're just like, talking about how incompetent they are at all this. But like, at the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter because they can just pay off everybody. And like, it does finally come back to bite them at the end. But that's like the first time anyone has ever paid a consequence for doing it. Right. And so I think that's interesting, to where like usually in Scorsese's films, you're seeing this very well run criminal operation. And this one is just like, because they're in a society that just does not give a flying fuck about Osage lives, that they can just do whatever they want and not have to worry about it. And they can just be super sloppy and not bother covering their tracks.
Well, it's also like, you see the Tulsa massacre as well as footage in it. And that
and
is
they
something
reference
that
that
took,
a few times.
That's something that took so long to even be remembered now. And like similar with this story, it's just like at some point in time, the rest of society was like, well, that was a fucked up thing that happened. Anyway, that's not what America's about. And like moved on. And it only has to resurface now when people are able to be like, that is really fucked up. We should we should tell stories about this, do other things. Like, yeah.
Which is what Hale says. He's like, we'll move on. They'll forget about it. Like, this will blow over. And he does really, it's interesting looking at it from Hale's standpoint of like, he's in there with the tribe. He's in their meetings. Like they view him as that important. He's supporting the town. And it's like, and he's doing all these horrible things. And Darla was like, how is that possible? Like even afterwards, he's like writing to the tribe after it's like all come out. And I was like, he just doesn't see them as people.
No.
Yep.
Like he just straight up doesn't see this as like, he knows what he's doing fully. And he just is like, doesn't see them on the same level as him. And I think he kind of wraps Ernest up, honestly, or, in that as well. And is like kind of constantly telling him these things of like, they're going to die anyway. Like, right. He's always kind of trying to lead him on to this conclusion of like, just don't worry about it, man. Like it's just not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And you're right. And it's like, yeah, it did kind of like eventually sort of gloss over. It has moved on, and it's now, starting to come back up to realize the level of this, the scale of it. Which even at the time, I was like, it's only more recently, I think we realized it's like hundreds of murders that are around this, most unsolved.
And they've only been convicted people for like 4 of them. Right. Like there's so many unsolved murders and all of this. Like, and it's like they couldn't really test. They didn't really know how to test for poisoning at the time. And so they're just like putting strychnine in moonshine and giving it to people. And like, there's just so many things that were happening that were either not capable of being tested, or the local law enforcement was just so stupid and untrained. They like didn't really know how to do.
We're in on it.
Yeah, where they're
absolutely
in on
they're I mean, even the fucking doctors were in on this shit. I'm like, they have a Hippocratic oath. Did they have an oath back then? I don't even remember.
Yeah, that goes back. Yeah, it goes back to like the Greeks. That thing's super old.
Yeah, right. You would think.
The one thing you're not supposed to do, don't do any harm.
God damn it!
It's your one fucking job.
But yeah, I really did appreciate kind of like the way laying everything out on the table, which we talked about. Scorsese doesn't try to make this a whodunit. He makes you know exactly who's doing what. And from the get-go, I just want to talk about Robert De Niro's performance, and how he walks that line between foreshadowing things and at the same time, he's in the tribal circle. He's endeared to them. He has these tender moments with different people in the Osage tribe, and how it produces this feeling like it's a pit in my stomach of just like how despicable he is. But also it, to me, was at times, it made me laugh, like just how fucking brazen he was with what he could do. So like, for instance, from the beginning, him talking to Ernest about the Osage people and giving him a book on their culture. And
do you like women?
Yeah. and him kind of explaining that, and you can immediately tell that there's a supremacy to what he's saying, where he exoticizes the Osage, and he talks about how he's sort of towing the line for them being a respectful culture and how you should do this and that with them. But at the same time, he's teaching Ernest, like laying out all these lines of how to manipulate them and how to fit in and how to actually like navigate this tribe to get around what they want. And then one of the other scenes that we see later is after, a few of the murders have been happening, and the tribe's like, we need to send somebody to Washington. We need to figure out who's doing this. And he's like, I'll put $1,000 on that, that bounty. If you have information, you come to me first. And like, I laughed.
Not to
when
the
I
tribe,
fucking
not
saw
to
that.
law enforcement.
Yeah. And everybody else just nods and is like, yeah, here. And it's just like, it's a testament to like, he's really fucking worked his way in. The snake is like living amongst all of the flock there. And it's like, wow, okay. This is wild, that he can just get away with this shit. But yeah, like just his performance leading up to and continuing on, even towards the end when he's, trying to negotiate and writing them letters and he's in jail and everything. De Niro manages to have this delusional sincerity, and it's not a real sincerity. It is the sincerity born out of him exploiting the Osage people. That comes across so well and so believable, where I feel like other actors would probably, it'd be too telegraphed. It would be too much of like a hammy performance, like too much of a villain. It's so slimy. And I don't know that I've seen De Niro do something like that in another role. I can't really think about it. Like we talked about like the mob, and a lot of his roles in other Scorsese films are sort of like, he's part of the mafia. He's doing this in the mafia. And here he really does embody that early 20th century white supremacy vibe of, we can do whatever we want. We wear the pants in this fucking culture. And it's fucking ridiculous that you think that you are entitled to this oil and whatever. We should get the head rights. But yeah, I was curious if y'all had other notes on like De Niro's performance. Are there other performances that you really, really admired? Even like ancillary characters too. Like
De Niro's performance actually reminded me a little bit of his Cape Fear performance. It's not as evil as his Cape Fear performance, like as overtly over the top evil as Cape Fear performance, but like, you know, it's like you forget like Scorsese can actually come. I mean, I'm talking about Scorsese. De Niro can actually come across as a Southerner, and it's weird because he just looks like an Italian New Yorker, but he can do a really good Southern accent, and he has that menace to him that he does in Cape Fear. And there is a scene in Cape Fear that's really great. That's between him and Juliette Lewis, where he is basically hitting on Nick Nolte's teenage daughter and like trying to ingratiate himself in with that family, to the point where he actually gets his daughter on his side and like gets her to be sexually interested in him. And it's this he's like coming across as affectionate, but very evil undertones at the same time. And with that Southern accent, it kind of reminds me of this performance a little bit from Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting having him not be sort of the classical over the top. Like there's never a moment where he like actually explodes in anger in a way that you would kind of expect from the mob boss, like behind the closed doors. Like you mentioned, there's like where he's like yelling at him about how stupid he is in the car over the murder, but it's sort of like a regular argument. It's not like a mob boss argument.
It's like, you stupid nephew, you piece of shit.
He acts kind of like
never
a
do
father
anything
figure.
right.
I mean, he even spanks Ernest.
Yeah.
Like he fucking rattles his ass.
That's not in the book. Just added for fun.
Like,
just what a scene. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. And that's like the furthest he goes. And even that is like it's so subtle and quiet too, where he's just like, you know, bend over, like, here we go. All right. And then he's like, we'll move on to the next thing. Like, and he never gets his hands directly dirty. And if anyone does like chew out Ernest, it's someone else for him. Like he really is doing everything through these other people, and, you know, just being this subtle manipulator that sits there looking for these opportunities, but kind of just relies on everybody else to do everything. Yeah, and it was, which I find interesting. I liked it as a much more quiet. And yeah, no, De Niro's great. I really, talking about performance wise, like De Niro and DiCaprio, like both actually do decent accents, which I appreciate. A lot of times you get these and it's like, it's not really what it is.
And they both had practice with it before, like DiCaprio and Django and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like he's done it before and done it pretty well.
Yeah, he's got that down now really well. Jesse Plemons was really good too on his accent. I thought he had the good subtle, like slow cadence.
I'm pretty sure he's from Texas. I'm not sure where, but I think he is. If it's not, we'll just edit this comment out.
Cheating, then.
Yeah.
Nope, we're keeping it in.
But I appreciated that as well. I think Jesse Plemons, I like that. I was saying earlier before we were recording, like, I haven't really seen him in good stuff. Like Antlers is
you've got to watch. I'm thinking of ending things.
Oh yeah,
I've got the bad Jesse Plemons movies down. So it was good to finally see him like in a role where I can actually see him act. And he stood out. Like he did that right level of like, does he know something? Does the investigator know something? Right. Kind of like scaring everyone because it's like clearly he knows something, I guess. I can't tell. And he's like, okay, I'll be back. All right. You know, already talked to them. Yep. Already talked to them. Like every single time. I thought that was really great. We get to like real quick, fast, like John Lithgow, Brendan Fraser towards the end.
That is my client.
again, like they're always awesome. Like even, as short as compared to this 3.5 hours short as what you get from them was really great.
I really liked the actors who played the Shun brothers, those evil doctors. Like, they were so just conniving and slippery and gross. And, like, from the minute you see them, you're like, I don't like them. There's something fucking wrong with those guys. And, the way that they are involved in all of these murders, right? Like in Anna Brown's murder, they are hiding the bullet. They're poisoning Molly Burkhart. They're like behind the scenes and all this stuff. They are connecting the Undertakers with the dead bodies so that like the Undertakers who are in on it can kind of get rid of them and get rid of the evidence. Like, and those motherfuckers, like they're so good at just when law enforcement comes around, it's like, oh, well, I don't know. It's just, we're just doing our job. It's not a big deal. But there's just this underlying shit heel nature to those guys that is just so unsettling.
They have that comedic duo kind of thing too.
Yeah. Like the big dude and the small dude.
Like the evil Abbott and Costello.
Yeah. We were looking for the bullet. He was looking for the bullet.
Oh man.
Eric, anything to add there?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the kind of way in which there's you almost have like a lot of the characters are kind of acting and operating in this kind of smooth, thoughtful. They know more than you know, and the actors, Jesse Plemons, the Robert De Niro, the evil Abbott and Costello, they're doing such a great job of acting as these kind of at times like manipulators of the system, or like, they're being used to manipulate on someone else's behalf, or they know more than they, kind of let on. And then you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's just like bumbling his way through this entire movie.
The dumbest person in the history of cinema.
Dumbest man ever on screen. Just in every conversation, he's the stupidest person, including when he's like hanging out with his kid, his like 2-year-old kid who doesn't talk. And like, it's like that kid could run circles around him, And it's such a fascinating, like, I think it speaks to some of what I've been processing and thinking about this movie is some of the duality of it, of these like, I loved what you said earlier, Dixon, about how like this is the first time you really see the victims of the crime syndicate up close, and you see them as like not just fully human, but also like fully enmeshed in this system that they don't understand and can't control, and in many ways have trouble influencing, or at least influencing in the way they intend to, right? And so I don't know that I have some like grand theory of kind of how this fits in, but just the idea then of, you have these general characters who are operating on levels and kind of, acting on these, the actors are kind of playing these, I don't want to call them sophisticated, because oftentimes their schemes are quite stupid.
Right.
And not like these are not criminal masterminds.
We're just going to blow up somebody's house.
Exactly.
The night.
That's the easiest way. We're going to go to a cattle show. Fuck it.
What one of the things I loved in that, and it's always tough to watch things like this with the lens of the present, right? But I just immediately connect that to the Ku Klux Klan openly marching in the town parade with their hoods off, right? Like this is these people are not operating really in any kind of sophisticated way. They're not really even hidden in a lot of ways. They're hidden by indifference and by incompetence, but more indifference than anything, right?
Yeah.
And then but they think of themselves as these sophisticated actors, and you have these very talented actors playing these layered, complex people. And then again, just to bring it back to DiCaprio just bumbling his way through this whole thing where he can't do just about anything right.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Like just about every scheme he runs on behalf of Hale is at best doesn't really work, and it often
he has to know, but he doesn't. But any reasonable person would know that he's the next person that Hale's going to kill, right? But he never crosses his mind.
To him. Yeah.
He signs
so
that paper and shit.
That was such a funny. That was such a. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it is so funny.
And he's like, did Brian sign it? And it's like his brother is not married to an Osage woman. It doesn't matter if he signed it.
Yeah, I loved the actors. DiCaprio can play more than that for sure, no question. But it was absolutely a great casting of actor to just the level of slipperiness that they needed to play in there and their talent for playing it. And no one can play a dumb guy like Leo. It's really an incredible talent he has.
Yeah.
So I thought it was incredibly. It was well cast and just fascinating to watch these actors kind of bounce off each other.
And I think that kind of the representation of the victims at the hands of like just the spectrum of whiteness that's in this, the level of like there's intelligence and there's like fucking there's intelligence and there's earnest, you know, and and like it's an indictment to just how out in the open things could be. And it reminded me of like in BlacKkKlansman, when they had that whole segment where the entire movie kind of stops to tell the story of the lynching of Jesse Washington and how like just a bunch of white people got together and decided they were going to lynch Jesse Washington, and they had like postcards made, and it was just like everything is publicized. Like none of that evil was hidden. But in like a post-racial, I'm using quotation marks because we're not post-racial folks, America, you have like all of this, like we're past racism. Somebody last week told me America's the least racist country in the world, which I was like, wow, I didn't know that we were comparing racism across countries. And
you
that
ever
it's
check the recent
to
league
be
tables?
Yeah, like I don't know, is there a heat map I can? How does this look out?
Where's Mark Stein's latest racist power rankings?
And
That's a basketball joke.
It just is that like that indictment on the entire system, and I felt like it's even accented with kind of the end of the movie when they wrap up like the entire story with this. What is essentially a true crime broadcast where they're retelling the story, and they bring in a random dude to do a Native American impersonation. And you have like all of the Foley and everything, and it's made entertaining. And you just see this audience of white faces that are all like sitting there smiling and enjoying the entertainment of this terrible story. And it really is just like, wow, they took this tragedy. They definitely did know about it and like told it this way. And people were like, wow, that's a really weird story that the FBI solved. All right. And they all moved on together. Like I felt like everything about this movie was intended to be like, we don't want to bring the victims too far into the center because we want to show you how fucked up everything around the victims was, how everything in the system, every person in it, no matter how stupid they were, was able to get away with what they were getting away with. Like Ernest could have dragged somebody through town probably, and they would have had a comedic moment where they're like, you did what? You dragged so-and-so through town? You know you're not supposed to do that. And everybody in the town would have been like, we didn't see it. We have no idea what you're talking about. It doesn't matter. But yeah, that just feels like that indictment, like Scorsese's biting that pullback at the end of Wolf of Wall Street when Jordan Belfort is still giving an inspirational talk after everything he's fucking done. About how you can be a success in America.
That ending it's super interesting. Like, John, we were talking when we walked out of the movie, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that ending. Like, I felt like the penultimate scene of Ernest and Molly talking, and Molly being like, what did you inject me with? Like, be honest with me. Just tell me this. And he's like, insulin. And she just like looks at him like, you fucking piece of shit, and gets up and walks out of the room. I thought that was a really powerful scene. And then it goes to this playful radio teleplay scene. And I felt like it was kind of pulling away the impact of the end of the film. But the more I think about it, the more I really like that ending. And I think it's interesting, like Scorsese himself, you know, comes in and does a cameo at the end of the scene and reads Molly's obituary. And I think it's an interesting commentary about how, you know, we take these terrible crimes as a society and we make them as entertainment. The book goes into the history around this. Like, this was an FBI programmed radio show. Like, the FBI made this. Like, agents would write out the show and give it to the radio company, and they would make it. And the point was, like, Hoover was all about trying to drum up propaganda about the FBI to get more funding and to make it this big thing into the fucking awful behemoth that it has now become. And so this was all propaganda, and it's also like, this is kind of the original true crime, and today we still do this shit where like people get obsessed with true crime documentaries and podcasts and things like that, and get kind of sensationalize and like make these crimes like a sexy thing that you need to get into. And like I feel like Scorsese stepping in at the end of it is like him questioning himself, like should he actually be doing this, right? Like, is this his story to tell? And like, he clearly loved the story so much that he felt like he had to tell it, but I feel like there's still some second thoughts and some guilt there that he is the one telling the story, and that it is, mostly from a white perspective, from the way the characters are portraying the film. I saw that there were some Osage consultants on the film that after the premiere of the movie, they talked to the press and said like, I don't know if I like this. Like, it's not a movie for Osage people, it's for white people. And I was like, that's probably correct, right? Like it is a movie about white guilt and the implicit guilt of seeing these communal horrors occur and not stepping up and saying anything and doing anything to stop it. And like Scorsese, as a white American telling that story, is he the right person to do that? Probably not, honestly. But like, he made a really fucking great movie that I think is bringing this perspective to people who may not have seen it before. And even like I haven't seen very many things that really portray the Native American perspective to the degree that this movie does. And I think that's really great that he did that. And I think it's really fascinating that he seems to be dealing with that guilt and that thought in the back of his head, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but he clearly did it anyway. But he doesn't, he's still kind of dealing with that.
Yeah. One thread I have so many thoughts on what you just shared there. One thread I'd like to pull for a second is kind of on the FBI radio play, right? Yep. I mean, you have, and this is a piece, I've been thinking about a lot, is how, you see every MLK Day. The FBI goes on Twitter and posts, thank God for Martin Luther King, one of the greatest Americans who ever lived. And no one ever, everyone in the comments immediately responds, hey, didn't you guys try to convince him to kill himself? And also, didn't you murder Fred Hampton? And also, didn't you and so...
And she put a bunch of random people in jail who just like were communists, but not aligned with the Soviet Union. And
and it's both part of this I'm fascinated by so many angles of that. I'm fascinated by the propaganda angle and kind of how I felt like that last scene was very much a call out of the things that we see to this day of how the FBI tries to whitewash some of their what I would consider crimes.
Absolutely.
They're demonstrably crimes in many instances.
If you read the law, then yes, they are crimes.
That is so that is one way of considering whether it's a crime. In which case, yes, I would agree. By the letter and spirit of the law, they are committing crimes. And one thing, the movie kind of doesn't get into or kind of glosses over is, how did the FBI get involved in this case in the first place? And I'm really interested in this agency that really does have a terrible history of kind of handling anything other than minority-owned majority crimes, and even that they're not. This is pretty much a terrible history, right? And actually getting involved in something they should have gotten involved in and that was a problem, and also is antithetical to a lot of what their unofficial mission is. And I'm curious, for those who kind of had a chance to read up on the backstory, does it talk at all about like why the FBI actually got onto this issue and was interested in solving it? Because that feels so unexpected, despite knowing it going in.
It's so Hoover was still, hadn't proven himself yet. He was made like temporary FBI director, right? And he was like trying to win the job and prove his mettle there. And the Osage murders were a thing in national news because once they got rich, there were a bunch of terrible stories by white journalists being like, would you believe these Indians that have 12 cars and like, are spending their money like crazy, and like a lot of like really awful pieces of journalism that are meant to create resentment from white people toward these rich Native Americans. And then, once they start dying, that then now that the broader public is invested in their story, this becomes news, right? And so the murders are national news. And, the movie talks a lot about 3 or 4 of the murders. There are, 24, 25 well-documented murders occurring to that time, really hundreds that were going on. So there's a lot of press around it, and Hoover is this is the case that we need to solve to legitimize the FBI and I think it was just called the Bureau of Investigation at the time. And they're we're just gonna use this to boost the power of the FBI and to make us this force where at the time FBI agents could not carry guns, they couldn't arrest people. They were just a fact-finding group that would figure out who did it and then tell local law enforcement. And he was able to use this to catapult the FBI into a much more powerful position, to get them to be able to carry guns, to be able to arrest people, to be a huge national police force. And so this was not done out of the goodness of Hoover's heart to this is so sad that all these Osage are dying. It was, this is an opportunity to exploit a national story and to get my department in the news and to get more power. I think everything Hoover did at the end of the day was about getting more power.
Even wearing that girdle?
Yep, definitely wearing that girdle.
Kind of power.
Oh, okay.
It's also something that, again, is just touched on. There's just so much, in this movie anyway, that the complications of sovereignty and the support the nation can get, it's Oklahoma doesn't help, but they're also kind of not supposed to. And this is something that's still coming up in Supreme Court cases like this fucking year, that there's still this back and forth between that. Technically, the federal government is still over the nation. And then in that way, back then, it's who could investigate from the federal government? There wasn't. It was either you investigated inside yourself and there was no one you could go to. You policed inside yourself and there was no one to go to.
And the local law enforcement was all bought
Affairs.
off by the local rich people, Hale and other people of that.
Right,
ilk.
they were in with Hale, 100%. Yeah, and most of it in nations early was white people that were the police force for the native populations, and then you get to you're having to bring in the federal government that you don't trust because of how they've screwed you over, to potentially be the ones to help you from the people who are locally screwing you over, but then you give them more power, and it's just it's so complicated.
Lose-lose.
But
Rock and hard
absolutely.
place. Let's talk about the Den of Wolves reveal. I want to because they allude to it at the very beginning when Ernest is reading his culture book. He's doing his homework. And they have that section where he's can you find all the wolves? And he's baby's first book, reading all the wolves in this picture.
I love when De Niro's have you read up on the Osage? And Ernest's I can read.
Just that assuredness. I'm glad for you, Ernest. I'm glad. I would love to see Leo carry the torch for Jim Varney in Ernest.
Oh, dear Lord.
In Ernest movies.
Oh,
But yeah, that end sequence where they're kind of trudging him up to the courts and they're trying to get him to testify in front of everybody against Hale. And the moment that he gets into the court, that's when Brendan Fraser is I haven't seen my client for 2 months. And they're okay, this, even though John Lithgow was this is a conflict of interest.
Clearly witness tampering.
Yeah, clearly witness tampering. And all the white people were I guess we got to go with it, guys. He said it's the law. I don't fucking know. And then Ernest literally just goes into this room where everybody you have seen in the movie to this point is just sitting there, and it's in this fucking stark light. It's so harsh. And you can it just hasn't, it exudes a cosmic darkness, to quote Mandy, of just holy fuck, what's about to happen? And they just sit him down and start fucking running him through everything he needs to say, because Ernest, of course, our boy, he's very fucking spineless.
You wouldn't
knows
want to
exactly-
do this horrible
you're
thing to
killing
all
him.
your white friends.
Yeah, they beat you, didn't
you're
they?
killing him.
Yeah. Don't you know you're killing your uncle? And they beat you, didn't they? They beat it out of you. Like, just everything. And he's like, I love that whole sequence where Ernest doesn't get it, like, immediately, and they're like, they beat you. And he's like, well, no, they didn't beat me. They sat me down, and they made me stand for a little bit and talk about it. And he's like,
Kept me up late a few nights.
It's like, no, they beat you. And he's like, yeah, they beat me. Yeah, totally. Just like reiterating it to Molly, and it really just it is at that point. It just totally exemplifies how like spineless he can be. It hammers everything home about it. But I love that change of tone, that change of like. That's where you see, I don't know. It's one of those things that I don't think about too often in other movies, because it's like either your movie's hyper stylized or it's really realistic now. Like, you don't really get an in between of like mixing tonal visuals and fucking with color grading and all of that stuff. Nobody really talks about it that much, but like here, intentionally seeing a room that is lit a certain way and seeing all the characters have this completely washed, it's literally a whitewashed room of people who are just staring at you. And it actually like pierced me when I looked at it, because it has that same thing that Koyaanisqatsi has, where there's nobody expected this coming into the conversation, but there's a sequence at the end of Koyaanisqatsi where you look into the eyes of other human beings, and you can kind of see like they're all blue collar, and you can kind of see their souls and everything. Looking into the eyes of a bunch of rich white people is terrifying. It's probably the most horrifying thing in our spooky season. I don't know how to handle it. But yeah, like
this like feigned innocence, and this like, you wouldn't do that to us. We're your friends.
Like there's a pained look about them that also just completely betrays any kind of pain they could be feeling. It's so manufactured.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious, what did y'all think when that scene, because there's such a build up to it, and I remember seeing it in the trailers, which I probably shouldn't have watched. I really should have just gone in blind. But like, how did that feel, that whole like switch in color and everything?
Yeah, I agree with you. That was a very powerful sequence. I think it echoes a scene that both John, you and Eric mentioned earlier, which is the parade with the Klan, where like they just like, that's the scene that has stuck in my mind more than anything, where it's like they're on screen for 2.5 seconds, right? Like Ernest is walking across the street in the middle of a town parade, and the Klan are marching. He's like, "Oh, hey, Bob," and then just keeps going, and you're like, "Holy shit!" Like the Klan is actually not talked about in the book. It's like a touch that Scorsese added, because like they were clearly there historically, and I thought that was a really interesting thing to add into it, where like it's just the undertone of hatred and racism is there under everything, right? And it's like the story isn't about the Klan. It's not necessarily, to the extent that we know, members of the Klan that are committing these murders, but there is that attitude that is just laced in every aspect of society. And that meeting in that room, where it's like every white person in town begging Ernest not to rat them out in court, is just it feels like an echo of that scene where like, oh shit, like all of these people that we've kind of seen in the background of scenes earlier throughout the movie, they're actually complicit in all of this. And we think like, oh, that person seems nice, they're just over there, they say hi to Ernest in the scene, and then they leave. And it's like, no, they're actually totally cool with all of this evil killing that's going on, and they want it to happen, and they don't want any of their white friends to be implicated in any of it. And it's just this superiority mindset that has infiltrated the society to a degree that it's almost impossible to rip it out. It's so ingrained into everything.
Yeah, and that's something, again, a little bit going back to something we talked about before, where you don't generally in Scorsese movies see kind of the hanger, or not even the hangers on, but kind of people outside the mob coming together to defend the mob. Right? There's no sense necessarily in the film that every one of those characters was committing these crimes as well, right? But there is every sense that they are, at a minimum, totally fine with the crimes, or even if they're maybe even worse, even if they're not totally fine with the crimes, they're standing on the side of the white people at the end of the day when when push comes to shove. And again, it's something I don't think Scorsese's ever made such a blatantly political movie before, and I defer to other people who've seen far more Scorsese films than I have. Whether that's true, but the movie is an indictment not just of the people at the time, not just of the white people at the time, but of all white people in America. On the founding of America, the way that we have systematically dispossessed people of their land, their lives, their property. That is the foundation of America. And even if
the original sin of the country.
Exactly. And that even if you were not in, the cool gang that got to do it all together and, be part of the mob, you were at a minimum good with it. Right. And when it came time to close ranks, you knew whose side you were on. Right. And that was, I think, one of the things that was so chilling to me about the movie. I think the most chilling thing to me remains the Molly De Niro relationship. But that was kind of a secondary piece of this that just really, underlined the whole film. And particularly in that scene is just brought out fully into the open that, whatever your socioeconomic status, whatever your background, whatever your family relationships, whatever, it doesn't matter. Skin color runs deeper than all of that. And that was it was a chilling scene. It was really, it was tough to watch.
It's in the Masons Lodge too, right? Again, kind of in the background, we see the Masons symbols.
Bill Hale always wore a Masonic Lodge pin. I don't think he was actually a Mason, but he just wore that because he wanted to seem cool.
He wanted to be it. And there's also I would say that the reflection of the meeting when the Osage people are talking about sending someone to DC, and they're all traditionally sitting in a circle. There's not necessarily this, it's like we're all together. They've brought in Hale to that conversation even. And then we have in the Masonic Lodge here, it's like ranking. There's not like a circle. It's this like impressive, everything is focused in on this one point, and there's almost like a representation of the ranking system. The women are on the wall. The attorney in the suit is up in the front yelling in your face. That I was like sort of the same thing too, of not just like, not only are they all somewhat in on it, and I think also like seeing the like wives, sisters, daughters, or whatever are also in there, like just as in on it too, that maybe you in the back of your mind would think like, oh, they're just the women in the town or whatever, not realizing like, they could be just as evil. That there's this like ranking of like who's on top that you have to look out for, and you don't matter. It's not about you. It's about your uncle. Like, you're trying to save your skin. I don't care. Your uncle, you need to save him, right? That there's this like importance level even beyond just the skin color. And kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, like I agree that this isn't a movie about the tribe, and it does not spend as much time talking about their background, their traditions, like what bloodshed did they go through to get to where they were, to be pushed to that area. Like, all of that is kind of just like passed and glossed over. And that would be and should be an important thing to tell. But this movie also does a really good job of telling something that white people still need to hear. And like, yes, this is a movie for white people, and using this true crime story to say like, look how fucking flippant this racism and violence can be and was. These are people that died in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like this was you could think it's a long time ago, and maybe the movie presents it a little bit in this, like in the West, but you're like, Ernest didn't die until like 1985.
Yeah.
Like,
he outlived Molly by like 50 years.
Yeah.
Fuck that dude. Yeah.
And then also the like erasure of it, that Molly's, obituary doesn't reference this, right? That she's so wrapped in and all this, all this loss that surrounded her. That's kind of just like, yeah, it's for white people entertainment. And then we forgot about it and we moved on. I'm like, that does need also to be told, and Scorsese can tell that story.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Eric, to build on what you said, I think you're right that this is Scorsese's most political film, but I do think he has made political films in the past. Like people don't think about them as such. I think Silence is very political about colonialism and things like that. The Wolf of Wall Street is very political.
Yes, it is. I would agree with
like
that.
Blatantly so.
Yes.
And there's so much anger in that film, and I love that movie so much. But I do think you're right that this is Scorsese reckoning with America to a degree that he has not before. And it's interesting to see his movies where it's like he almost views everything as organized crime, right? And I think that's right to a large degree, right? Almost everything is organized crime. And it's like, it's like, yes, he has movies about the Italian mafia. He has movies about Wall Street being organized crime, about police being organized crime with The Departed, about all of these aspects of society. And like with Killers of the Flower Moon, it feels like he's saying that like, no, just like, it's not just facets of America. It is America at large. The existence of America is organized crime.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about like, and we'll just briefly touch on it, but like, even though there is quite a bit of indictment to like white America, there are still some white Americans in this movie that try to do good and are ultimately undercut. And of course, Ernest comes face to face with one of them in Bill Smith, who is his brother-in-law.
Well, Bill Smith is not
Bill Smith
necessarily an
is-ish.
angel.
Yeah, he's not an angel.
He's like systematically marrying Osage women so he can
Yes,
be
he
rich.
is. Yes, he is as well. He's also exploiting it, but he is also asking a lot of questions about who did what in town.
And I do
he's
love that
sort of
scene
trying-
between him and Ernest.
in their like entertainment room or whatever.
And Bill is like asking Ernest questions, and Ernest's like, I don't like you. And he's like, what do you not like about it? He's like, I don't know, just like your essence. I just don't like you. And he's like, I can't really help that. And he's like, I know.
Lord made me the way I am. Yep, he did. Made it so I couldn't like you.
That's like the closest we get to the like classic Scorsese insult scene, like
That's a mook.
the mook scene in Mean Streets, or the like you wore fucking shorts to a meeting scene in The Irishman, and like all these like that are just so good. Like it was much more understated than his usual of those scenes, but I loved it.
But it's like I think that those characters are held up. They're not held up as like they're not fucking saints, obviously. But him and whoever the fuck the other dude was that was going to go to Washington, they're held up more as a contrast of like zero tolerance to any kind of consciousness, like any conscience of wrongdoing, because the other dude is like, I'm going to go to Washington and I'll see about it. We have no idea if he's actually going to give a shit when he gets to Washington, but he gets stabbed like 48 times before he can even get up there. And it's just that like, we can't risk it. We don't trust anybody who says they might do good. And they serve the purpose of just hammering home how tight-lipped a lot of this shit was. And like,
Ernest murdering the private detective that Molly hired. That scene is very, and it's like when you see the murder scene, it's like you get it from the waist down. And you're like, holy shit, I think that's Ernest. But then they show it like blatantly later in the movie. You're like, Jesus Christ! Like this guy is just like, again, it's just like whoever told him something last, that's what he's gonna do. He's like he's gonna kill that PI and then go home and like comfort his wife and
give
drunk.
the world's worst excuse possibly for
Yeah.
right, where he's like, well, you paid him, didn't you? He's like, she's like, yes, I paid him. And he goes, well, that's why he took the money and he ran
away.
That must be it. Like just a dullard through and through.
And immediately when Hale says that, he's like, oh yeah, that's totally right. He's a fucking parrot, man. Like he just repeats whatever anybody says.
This was also an era when like, policing was a developing science. Like the like highest form of policing at the time was like Arthur Conan Doyle writing Sherlock Holmes books, right? It's like they didn't really know what they were doing at the time. And like because cops and local law enforcement were so bad, PIs became a huge thing in the late 1800s and early 1900s. and like the Pinkertons came up out of
Pinkertons,
this,
yeah.
and like a lot of these just horrible detective agencies that were just actively committing fraud, buying off juries, things like that, that like they weren't actually detecting, they were just being shitty and evil and corrupt. And you pay them enough money, and then they can use some of that to pay off juries and defense attorneys and prosecutors and whatever to get done what they need to get done.
Yep.
And so like that, they're hiring PIs, the Osage tribe is, but like they kind of know that, like they have to kind of know based on the reputation of PIs at the time that like that's probably not going to work, but they're just trying to exhaust
desperate.
every resource that they can, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone is that they know is dying around them, and they're fucking terrified, and they're turning to anybody who might give half a horse's ass about it. And it's just like, it's just so crushing to see them exhaust every avenue and continue to fail and continue to see their loved ones die again and again.
Yeah, you can see this fucked up relationship of like the federal government has moved them
Yep.
and killed them
Many times.
and then and then is holding guardianship over them, holding their money from them. But then it's like, well, I gotta ask them to come investigate, right? And the PIs come in and they're doing it just for money as well. Like everyone's in here just praying for money. I think too, seeing the diabetes and the insulin conversation with Molly is also a good representation of like the continuing lack of trust of medicine too, because you have doctors that are fucking over the people and outright lying about it, or using it in this case, that then it's like, why would I trust doctors or lawyers, or like they've all
fucking
just
hate
fucked
doctors,
all of
man.
us over.
Yeah. Just, it is that, like, who do you trust? And that was where I saw and I'm not trying to star review shame people here, but I saw a 3-star review of this movie, and it said, I just didn't feel any of the tension or suspense or any of that for it. And I was like, excuse me, because
that feels like one thing that you can't criticize about this movie.
Honestly,
like,
yeah.
That was done very well. You can criticize the perspective of the film or what it's trying to say, but like, Jesus, you think it's not tense? Like, that's
look, like I don't care about the star rating as much. It's just it caught my eye, and the review itself was like, none of this was suspenseful or tense to me. And I was just like, I was very fucking concerned for Molly's well-being the entire time, because it really does a great job of establishing that, like, I know in a lot of instances where, God, what is it? It's like the nothing to hide policy and that kind of bullshit, where people are like, oh, well, like, you shouldn't be afraid of the cops if you got nothing to hide. They like trust the fucking authorities so much that they believe that it is infallible. And that really resonates hard in this movie, with like everybody being like, well, why don't you just go to this person? Why don't you just do this thing? Why can't you just trust these are doctors, like laying the label of authority on everything and then showing you why you should not trust any of those things, and like what exactly it is, like who these people are and how they betray you, and like this whole town being a community that's kind of in on the fucking conspiracy. I think it lays out perfectly so many counterpoints to that mentality, and somebody going to see it and coming out after and being like, there's no tension here, just falls completely flat for me, because the tension is, my God, who can you go to? What can you do? Like, you're trying to barter with everybody else who owns your life, and you don't know if they really will try to do anything in your best interest, or if they're doing it to boost J. Edgar Hoover and the fucking FBI, or if they're doing it to boost their own profits, or like, it just, that's the part that's like tense and gripping and concerning, is that nobody here is going to do it out of the goodness of their heart. Nobody here has any interest of charity. They're more just like, what's in it for me? How do I fucking get something out of this? It doesn't have to be oil money, but it just has to be something.
Yeah.
And that continues, like, Scorsese's just march against like capitalism and a lot of the shit that goes on in the system. So
yeah, I think too, like one of the scenes that really like sat with me a lot is the scene where Molly is like on her deathbed and she's talking to Ernest, and she's like, I need you to help me through this. Like, do not let these fucking doctors into this house. You go to the train and pick up my insulin from the train. Do not take it from those fucking sons of bitches. And like, Ernest, like she's telling the person that is killing her to save, like she's like, I know that someone is trying to kill me and I need you to save my life. And he is the one that is administering the poison that is killing her. And it's just this, like Scorsese is, you know, he's always in his movies very focused on loyalty and betrayal. And that scene is just so just heartbreaking, you know, to see that like Ernest is the last person in the world that she still trusts. She's given up on Bill Hale at this point. The doctors, like every white person around her, she's like, no, fuck them. But Ernest, I still trust you because I love you and you're my husband. And he's just coolly hearing that and then just going about his business and continuing to poison her. And it's just it's so brutal to see. And like to see her go from, she's so lively at the start of the film to so sad and sick as the movie goes on. And like Lily Gladstone is so fucking good. Like I had only seen her before this in a 2016 Kelly Reichardt film called Certain Women that she's fucking incredible in and got like a bunch of critical praise at the time and then didn't really get a lot of roles after that. But she played a very meek character in that movie and she did it really well. Like just an incredible performance as a very meek person. But it was really fun to see her play a character who has this vibrant personality in Killers of the Flower Moon, but then to see that systematically undermined throughout the course of the film was so heartbreaking. And I think it's just like probably my favorite performance of the year so far. And you know, especially that scene in particular was just heartbreaking.
The other thing that I kind of like think about with her hallucinating and being poisoned and all of this, something else that I really loved about this movie was how they represented visions in it, like the different characters that have visions of death. And we have not even talked about Ernest breaking down and his whole facade falls in that one scene where he's like, you believe in all this fucking spiritual shit. And like, he's just yelling at her about her belief system and just tearing her down in the middle of like trying to poison her to try to make her submit.
Despite the fact that she's also Catholic.
Yeah.
You know, like she has submitted to the white people religion, but just holds on to some things.
Her culture,
religion.
parts of her culture and her, the tribe and everything. And it's just like, those moments are so heartbreaking where like her mother sees the owl and the owl being a symbol of like it's misfortune or
like
it's
death.
Coming. Death. And being like, did you see it? And having that play into so many of the sequences where that ratcheted up so much of the tension beyond what, like, I would say probably just like, oh, we're watching her waste away while she gets injected with morphine laced insulin. It is these moments of like hallucination, because she also has a vision of King Hale coming to see her, and she's like, are you real? And he's speaking to her in Osage, and it's like this moment of she's questioning even if he's ever been legitimate or genuine in his concern for her, and that's in her, you know, sort of fever dreams of this. But there is that element of spiritualism that I think is respected. And like, other characters are not on morphine laced insulin and see the owl, and they see these things that predict their death and their demise. And I liked seeing that represented rather than it being logicked away or some kind of
the scene of Lizzie's death is really well done, where you know Molly's mother passes, and you have this scene of her kind of being ushered into the afterlife, and you know, then they cut back to kind of what's actually happening and the people mourning around her. And the dude that was next to me that was talking the whole time was like gasped when they cut back to the scene of people mourning around her. It's like, dude, you didn't fucking see that coming. Come on. But despite it being predictable, it was very well done, where like they were kind of like, you know, in the book, she's discussed as like one of the last members of the tribe who still really believes in the old ways and the religions and the traditions. And so to have her kind of ushered into the afterlife in that way, I thought was a really cool scene.
Yeah, I mean, the very beginning open where they're burying the pipe and they talk about, you know, our children will be raised in these new ways, not in the old ways. Again, it's like just a touch, but like the schools that are forcing English, you know, even the government is pushing them to be part of a church, like all of it to like remove this. And we do see a society that now has kind of taken on some of those aspects. And there definitely is that pushback you hear from some of the people of like, you took the white money, you know, and you're doing the white things now, like the buying the cars, the nice things. I think like Anna is a good representation of like, she dresses like a 1920s
flapper girl,
you know, white flapper girl, doesn't have the blanket that we usually see Osage women having. She's got the pearls on, like all the stuff, very much like just fully buying into the bullshit, buying into the culture, and giving up, you know, what their culture was, just being forced down on them.
Yeah, and it doesn't save her, right? Like she's one of the first to go. Yeah, it's like you can't, you know, there's always these cultural mindsets of like, you know, just like the kind of Fox News talking point of like, why don't those people just like behave like the rest of society? And
if only
like,
we're civilized.
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't fucking matter, dude. Like
you can never assimilate fully to a culture. It's a bullshit myth that you chase because you're sold that. So yeah, definitely that added so much to kind of the conversation in between these characters and just watching them slowly fade into that. And I wanted to also like just say that I'm curious what y'all think about I had the sinking feeling when I was watching it. You know, I talked about the Yellowstone fans coming out of this movie and being like, nah, I don't know about this movie. And part of it is there is even like Lily talks about how, or Lizzie, sorry. Lizzie. Lizzie talks about how at one point she lectures Molly. I'm like, you married this white man and you're like diluting our heritage. And there's kind of this, like all these white people are coming in and they're taking everything that we want. And part of it for me, I could just hear this tiny voice in the back of my head with somebody being like, well, that's like those white people, or like, oh, that's just like, you know, trying to just explain it away as like a post-racial sort of dilution.
We don't think that way anymore.
And being like, I just wish that those Osage people weren't so racist against white people. Like reverse racism is real, everybody. It's fucking like, that's something that I have seen enough media and I've talked to enough people about that I know somebody's going to walk out of this movie and be like, well, they just had the wrong interpretation. Like, I don't understand why they were so upset about, wouldn't you be happy that your daughter's in love with somebody or this kind of thing? But it's like they completely miss the whole message of like, no, there's an undercut. It's not just like that there's some dilution of, because that is in effect racism, thinking that like, oh, well, there's a dilution of the bloodline or something like that. It is the loss of a culture. It is the assimilation into what's supposed to be a melting pot. And it just kind of frustrated me thinking about like somebody coming out of this movie and talking to me about it in that way. And I was curious if y'all had any thoughts on it, or you had a similar kind of voice in your head that said something like that. You have a relative that might talk that way about it, and how you kind of process away that piece of like, okay, here's really what Lizzie's concerned about. Here's like really what the Osage people are concerned about. It isn't just like that the skin color is white of the people that love your children. It is this other aspect of assimilation into a government, into a society that's trying to force you out, to quell the flame of like who you are.
I think like, you know, the gut reaction of pretty much anybody when you're consuming media that is critical of your race or religious creed or whatever is to be defensive, right? And be like, well, you know, not all of us are like that, or no, that's not what I think is an individual. And it's like, that's just kind of a natural human response. And then I think if you're honest with yourself and you want to try to engage with the material, you will try to push past that and to think about things from the perspective of the victims, not from the people who are committing the crimes, right? And I think that's what this movie is asking white people to do, right? Is to look past that, like, yeah, some of these people are absolute shitheads, but like look at all the people that are here in the background that are just going along with this, and like don't think for a second that you might be better than those people and that you would actually like stand up and say something and risk your neck because everybody else is fucking dying who is like trying to actually solve these murders. Like it is trying to implicate everyone who is watching this as a member of the majority that is seeing these horrible acts committed. And I think like historically, I think it's interesting. Like, you know, you're talking about Lizzie being upset about her daughters marrying white men, and like all of her daughters did marry white men. And, you know, after a lot of the reign of terror occurred and all of these murders, the Osage tribe changed their headright rules to where you could only pass them on to people who were at least 50% Osage. And so that helped to kind of take away the marriage scheme to some degree, but not perfectly. But it, you know, it's like to some degree, the wound had already occurred, right? It didn't really, at that point, they're just kind of trying to patch it up as best they can. And then like the book talks about how like now nobody's drilling on Osage land anymore, and there are companies that are setting up windmills and trying to make wind power, and the Osage tribe sued those companies like, no, you have to get to drill into the ground. We own the rights on the ground. To put anything into the ground, you have to get our permission. And the courts ruled against them and in favor of the companies putting up the windmills. And a lot of environmental regulations, which, you know, have good intentions, are actually, you know, very detrimental to the Osage tribe because it makes drilling more expensive, and so fewer companies want to actually buy oil rights on that land. And so like you have the book says in like 2015, for like the first time in 100 years, nobody was drilling on Osage land, and like they were setting up a bunch of fucking windmills, but it became too expensive to drill, and a lot of the wells were running dry, and now they're poor again. And I think there's a quote from an Osage leader around the time that the killings were happening where he said basically like, I look forward to the day where the wells run dry, because then we won't have this wealth and our people can be happy again. And, you know, a lot of the Native American heritage is around being hunter-gatherers and being a very socialist community, that there's no ownership of property. You just live in a group. You have people that hunt, you have people that do domestic duties, and like you have people that gather and you do stuff for the group as a whole, right? Like there's no property ownership, there's no hierarchy. It's just kind of the group and helping everyone as a whole. And it's not possible for them to live that way anymore, right? And, you know, the thought like maybe when we don't have this wealth anymore, we could be happy, but it's like you can't really return to that state where they were at that point, because we've just fucking sown capitalism over everything, and you can't actually live as a hunter-gatherer anymore. And it's just every piece of land is owned by some white dipshit, and you can't just like hunt and gather on their land, right? And it's just fucking sad, like the way that this is all gone and where things are right now.
Yeah, and you have like it took Congress to pass that headright thing, which is bullshit.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
To Congress to come in and tell you who you can pass your rights on to. And the complications even beyond that tribe in particular with the, you know, casinos and who gets the rights to the casino money and where that falls. It's very complicated, even just saying like what's 100%, what's 50%, especially after the move of the tribes. They're intermingled, even more intermingled between tribes, between white people.
Spread out across the country.
Yeah, spread out across the country between black people. Like the whole thing with the Freedmen and the Cherokee, like that's still being worked out. It's like moved in some correct directions, but that's still, you know, even within the tribes issues. And then you just said like, yeah, I'm just like go on in a second here, but
go for it, Ryan.
Like this movie does, you know, it's showing this particular time period in this issue in the 20s, and I'm hoping that it brings enough attention that it opens the door for other discussions, because it is just still so much an ongoing problem. And I have family members that I can talk to, you know, or friends that I can talk to and just really quickly shut down arguments of the like, well, why can't they just speak English? Or why can't everything just be printed in English, and be like, that wasn't the fucking first language. And then you go in and you're like, if you do that, if you say that's what it has to be, you're killing these schools in these tribes and killing a language that very few people speak anymore. And you're like, oh, well, let's, we'll just put a wall up and that'll handle everything. And you're like, but where? Across these tribal lands? Like, you're going to take them away so that you can just build your wall because that's the easiest fucking solution you think you can come up with. Yeah. We started selling back public land to just sell to these industries to let them do whatever they want on it.
Yeah.
Like, those problems are there. And then there's like the complete in your face of like, well, what about the history of my football team and their name, baseball team? And it's like, what, their history? Like, that's the problem you have?
To be fair, the
Right.
Washington Commanders is a stupid ass name.
It's a stupid name, whatever. But they can, now they get their history and they can work towards that and
than
come
their
up with something.
previous
But
name.
Yes.
Much
It's
less stupid than their previous name.
But you still have teams that are still putting their, holding on to
The Florida
their
State
stupid shit.
Seminoles and yeah.
Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that's
Atlanta
a tougher
Braves, yeah.
relationship. There are certain schools like Florida State where it's a tougher conversation, a tougher relationship, because of the, and like even further, you can be like, well, now everybody can call themselves Vikings because they're all fucking dead. Like, is that okay?
Yeah.
Right? Like, these
Well,
things
the
are
Vikings
complicated
did the
issues.
violence. They did the pillaging.
They were into that. Yeah, maybe they're okay with
Yeah.
that.
They weren't the victims in those scenarios.
Yeah, but it's amazing to me how continuingly flippant to Indians the racism is, because it's so little known or recognized, and it's been there the entirety of America's history to just be there and to act that way. That's like, there's a sandwich store near me that has squaw bread, and like I
What?
bring it up and I've emailed them and shit like that, and it's just like they just don't even register that as something, because it's like they don't know, they've never heard that word in a context to realize what that is. Or you see street names or school names or the back of a fucking Jeep in front of you that just uses it,
Jeep
and
Cherokee,
it's
yeah.
just not even thought about as something it's just crazy. It's still just so crazy. But just to just like show the violence of it is something to catch people's attention, and maybe we can start moving forward on a conversation from there.
Yeah. It is wild that, like, in our sports mascot environment, it's like there's animals and there's Native American tribes. And like,
Right.
it is like an equating of those things, right? How can it be anything else? It's like in the same fucking division, you have the Detroit Tigers and the Cleveland Indians, right? And it's like, it's just crazy that that
there's the
exists.
Fighting Irish, and there's a few
We
other
do like to
things
fight.
that
That's
should-
actually a fair. I can't argue with that one. Actually, I can argue with
You
it.
can, yeah,
and I will.
absolutely. There are animals and there are horrible stereotypes.
There are animals and stereotypes,
That's
yes.
exactly.
There are the very rare white man mascots like the New England Patriots and the Boston Celtics and the Fighting Irish, but they are few and far between. I think that's all of them. I think we just named all of them.
I'm glad it never made its way to cereal. Did it? I don't know if cereal's ever had a indigenous people's mascot.
I'm
but
sure
I
they
feel
have.
like there was.
Yeah, they did. They had to have. Yeah, I always have this like SNL skit in my mind, especially back when there was some reckoning with brands to start resolving some of those things. Not finished, some reckoning.
Yeah.
That there was like a CEO, like a white guy CEO, and they're coming in and telling him like, "Hey, we've got to change the name. We got to change the logo," and they're kind of going over each item that they're having to change the name on, and it's getting increasingly more bizarrely, brazenly racist up until the point that it's like, he's like, how far can this go? How far can this go? And he's like, the next thing you're telling me is that we can't have cereal. Like, it's like something where it's just straight up wrong.
Yes. Exactly.
The thing I think about, I can't remember who pointed this out to me, but now I can't stop thinking about it, which is the way the U.S. military uses Native American terms to name weapons and attack vehicles. You got the Chinook, you've got the
Apache.
Black Hawk, the Apache, the
Yeah.
Tomahawk missiles. Those are the first four I could come up with. There's probably some others. And it's galling on several fronts. Particularly the level on which, like, a large degree to which the U.S. federal government was forced to form was about coordinating Native American removal. Right. This is one of the ways areas in which the states could not independently operate. Right. And so one of the key roles of the U.S. military in the early days was the murder and relocation of Native American tribes.
Yep.
And we memorialize that by naming our weapons after them, which we then use to do colonialism overseas, right? Like,
Like, look at all these warriors we have killed.
Yeah,
we will
it's
now
like-
kill you. with
Yeah,
them.
it's like we by killing them, we got to take their name, like some weird, like old school, like like mystical way in which you like absorb.
Now we're going
their-
to
I
use
don't
them
know.
in a
It's
very
just-
incompetent fashion
Yeah.
in Iraq and Afghanistan. And
Yeah, and I don't remember. I didn't come.
we're going to sell them all to Ukraine, and they're going to fucking sell them to a bunch of Nazi sympathizers. Okay.
I don't remember who pointed that out to me, but it just it lives rent free in my head, and it's constantly kind of coming back up. And
That's
as we were
wild.
talking about this, I couldn't stop thinking about that. It's a truly like ghoulish aspect of our military on top of all
really
the other
is.
ghoulish aspects of it.
Is there an aspect of our military that is not ghoulish?
It's not ghoulish. Yeah. So much of the growth of that, right? The cavalry, the troops, but I'm like even further. Jesse Plemons steps in. He's like, "Oh, I'm a former Texas Ranger." I'm like, "That's Texas Rangers."
Texas
Yes.
fucking
Yes.
Rangers.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Which is
right.
baseball team
Comfortable.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the horrible history of Chuck Norris. No one wants to go there. That's just.
Oh man.
We've talked a lot about this movie. We're going a little long here. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but any final thoughts that you guys have that you want to get in before we wrap this up?
The scene that most has stuck with me, and I'm curious to get quick reactions knowing that we're kind of past time, is when DiCaprio takes what I assume is morphine. And the fields around him are burning. And he has this like melding of like a vision and like the reality.
That shot is fucking
it's
badass.
An incredible scene.
Yeah.
And you have the like I don't know. Again, it's so hard with a movie like this not to draw parallels to the sins of America's past. And so you see this man riding by on horseback as these men are kind of like beating the ground with sticks, I guess, to kind of like cut the path off for the fire. And you can't help but think of like the overseer on a slave plantation, right? While this fire burns, and it's such a striking scene. And I would be remiss to kind of end this episode without just mentioning in passing that like I don't fully know what to make of it, but it really stuck with me and really affected me.
Yeah, it's a really well done sequence, and there's also the insurance salesman that's like, wait, that's Bill Halesley. I just sold him a $30,000 fire policy last week.
Looks like he got some work for tomorrow morning. Just so casually joked about too.
And it's also interesting because like Tom White is the FBI agent, has to kind of hold his meetings with his informants like randomly at night out in fields, and that's the only way he can be sure that nobody's listening in on him and they're not sabotaging what he's doing. And you see that scene is interesting because you see some of the local members of the community who are actually trying to help him and contribute to the cause, but they're just being swindled by Bill Hale, like to the nth degree. And it's kind of darkly comedic, and it's just, man, like it's just such a kind of a powerful sequence, like kind of that realization hitting as Ernest is doing the morphine and seeing this weird smoky vision of the fire and the workers on the land. And it's just the only thing I would add to that is just like I think the cinematography is always great in a Scorsese movie, and Rodrigo Prieto does a great job with this film. And the two shots that really stand out to me are that and the like scene at the beginning of the movie where the tribe discovers oil, and there's like that slow motion shot of this celebration dance as this oil is raining down, and then like hard cut to modern day, and like what's coming, right? And like that oil is a curse, not a blessing, and it's going to destroy their community rather than to bolster it. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on that. That scene is really well done and really powerful.
Yeah.
Definitely the like flames closing in on him sort of aspect of it too, where you can just they're outside the window, just the redness of all of it.
Yeah, the like we talked about it, Dixon, when I was looking at that. It's like it's an impressionistic painting. It's like this. It is the damnation of like everything around this greed, and there's so much of a lingering on the flame and the heat waves from it, and it makes this like hauntingly beautiful image of the silhouettes toiling in the middle of fire, and you just watching somebody like. It could be that they are clearing a path for the fire. They could be digging their own grave. Like who knows what the visual metaphor is intended to be, but contrasted with like Ernest pouring morphine into his drink and into the insulin, there's this sort of like, if I'm going down, you're going down with me. Like America is taking itself down with everything else that goes with it. That just, it's definitely stuck with me. Like I can close my eyes and see that scene very vividly. Yeah. So yeah,
it's also like when he's actually taking it himself, you're like, is he developing a bit of a conscience here? Is he going to actually turn around and realize, hey, I need to be with my wife and side with her and like fuck Bill Hale and we need to stop all this shit? And it's an emphatic no. But like that's that character, like you have moments where you're like, I think he maybe has a moral compass and maybe he
so
sees
many times
what
you're
he's
like,
doing.
this is where he'll
maybe
know.
He's human.
Yeah. Nope, definitely not.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
We talked a little bit on the ending scene with the built around the radio play. That was something that Darla was really like not into. She said it was a little too disjointed. I think kind of what you said, Dixon, of like you had a good capping ending moment and then you like stop and do this. But I was like at the same time, it felt better than normally you would just have the text at the end that's like the updates about all of it to kind of help drive home the realism.
Yeah.
It was like, I think he still was like, I need to make it clear like this happened and tell you what happened afterwards and also show you like it didn't get better. Like it didn't, it's not like there was this huge change or anything. Like this is what it is. And then also bring in that like, and now people forgot about it. Like we told it and then it's forgotten about. I liked it. But I agree, it was like a little disjointed. Darla had said, she was like, maybe if they started the radio play and then you went in and then you came out on the radio play.
And
I was like, that's almost too much.
Yeah, that's a framing.
Yeah, it was almost too much. But she was like, maybe just see them setting it up and then you have the whole thing and then you come back and you're like, oh, that's what that was. I was like, okay, maybe. I was like, I don't know. I was still like, I got why he did it, but also at the same time was like mixed feeling about it though.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I really like the way it ended. And I think like, again, at first I was like, man, you're really kind of pulling the rug out from under this powerful ending of this movie. But I think like within the broader historical context and thinking about how true crime pervades our modern society, and we don't fucking care about the victims of those crimes.
It's
There's
the
like,
entertainment of them dying.
That's interesting. That's fun. And then we move on to the next thing. And like, I think that is kind of important to cast the film in a modern context and to think about like, oh shit, this isn't just a thing that happened 100 years ago. This is a thing that we're still doing this today, right? We're taking these horrible stories and we're exploiting them for profit and, doing a million documentaries and podcasts and Dateline NBCs and all these things. And it's just all like, we never think about the victims of these things and how they might think about their story being broadcast across the world. And I think like, Scorsese has done this a lot in his career where he's adapting stories that like maybe are true or just like the person who did it says they are true, right? It's like, it's unclear how true Goodfellas is or how true The Irishman is or how like The Wolf of Wall Street is pretty well established. I think that's pretty much true. But like a lot of these stories, he's basically taking this person's account, being like, I like some of the aspects of this story and I am going to exploit that for my own artistic vision. And him kind of inserting himself at the end of the film, it feels like almost an indictment on his own career and him questioning what he has been doing with himself since 1990. You know, like he didn't really do that much before Goodfellas, but he's done it a lot since then. And I thought that was a really fascinating way to wrap it up. And it is jarring. Like it's a very kitschy, weird vibe at the end of the movie that is not what the rest of the film is doing. And it like I was telling John after we walked to the theater, I was like, I don't think I liked that. But like now the more that I think about it, the more that I think that was kind of the perfect way to wrap up the story.
Yeah.
And I agree. I'm like so hungry for a second watch that being able to like now recontextualize it. Like I wonder how I'll see it next time.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool. Well, we have talked a lot about Killers of the Flower Moon. We could probably keep talking for another couple hours, but I think we're going to wrap this up. So, John, would you recommend this movie?
Like, come on, why are you going to ask me, man? Why are you going to fucking ask me?
Because that's what we do here,
I
John.
absolutely would recommend this movie. Yes. I don't even have to explain why, because we've talked about it enough. So, yeah.
All right. Eric, would you recommend this movie?
I mean, yeah, twist my arm, I guess so. If I got to pick, yeah, I guess. No, it was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more highly.
All right, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, this is like everything about this is perfect. Like this should get so many nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't even talk about music and score, but
John
like
mentioned
that
it.
also
I
was
mentioned
really
it
interesting.
roughly.
Yeah, a little bit. We didn't talk. You know, it's like we could keep going.
Robbie Robertson's
but
his mom is full blood Native American, and I learned that reading like reviews this past week, and I didn't know that, but I was so sad to hear that he passed. I didn't even realize that until I watched the movie, and it said like in memory of Robbie Robertson. I was like, oh, holy shit! Like I had no idea, and I really want to go back and rewatch The Last Waltz now, so I'll probably do that this week. But it's really sad to hear that he's gone.
Yeah, but absolutely recommend. Darla absolutely also recommended it.
That's
we
rare.
went and saw it. Yeah, no, this was like a full. She was like, especially for it being that long. We went and saw it in the IMAX as well, and she was like, I'm surprised no one got up and went to the bathroom. And I was like, I don't think anyone could. I was like, if someone would, like everyone else would have to too, like almost turn around to the projectionist and be like, hey, can you please hang on? Like we're so gripped, but everyone's like, let's get 5 minutes.
I just peed in my soda cup during the movie.
I wore Depends.
Cool. I would also wholeheartedly recommend this movie. I think it is a fascinating twist on the Western. Actually, we were talking a few weeks ago. I think it was when we talked about High Plains Drifter, when we were talking about Westerns. I was like, it'd be interesting to see a Western from the perspective of the Native Americans and seeing white people as this colonizing evil force. And I think this is the closest thing we've gotten to that. I don't know that it's fully from that perspective, but I think it's a fascinating film, and I can't wait to see it again and to really unpack everything that it's doing. So, go watch Killers of the Flower Moon. It's in theaters, probably wherever you live. I have been your host, Michael Dixon. With me, as always,
John Garcia. I said it before when we watched Sound of Metal. I wanted to see movies made by deaf people. Now I'll say it with Killers of the Flower Moon. I want to see more movies made by indigenous people. Exploitation or otherwise, go for it. I just want to fucking see more indigenous voices on the screen, you know?
There you go. And our special guest.
Hey, Eric, thanks again for having me, guys. Please, next time you have a guest on, give them a heads up to write a couple jokes ahead of time. I can't promise they would have been any better than what I came, than me just calling you out on it. Yeah. But I could have come up with something pretty terrible if you'd let me. So
next time. And as always,
Ryan King. I don't like whiskey. I love whiskey.
There he is.
God damn it. I was going to follow up with that line.
You're not going to get to now.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
I don't like whiskey. I love it.